It's 1887, and two brothers step into Detroit, carrying nothing but their dreams in each other. Fast forward a few years, and they're running one of the top machine shops in the city, working for the man who would go on to redefine the car industry, Henry Ford. But what most don't realize is that these two brothers were actually the ones behind Ford's early success. They built nearly every key part of his vehicles with unmatched precision and quality. Without their craftsmanship, the iconic Model T might never have come to life, and Ford Motor Company might not be the giant it is today. Despite all this, their contributions are still largely forgotten, hidden beneath the towering legacy of Henry Ford. Later, their collaboration would turn into direct competition when the brothers launched their own car brand, challenging Ford in the fast-growing auto market. At their peak, they even became the second highest-selling automaker in the country, just behind their former partner. But that's also when things began to unravel. Even though their name still lives on through millions of cars around the world, few remember the real story behind it. This is the overlooked, bittersweet history of the Dodge brothers.
Back in the 1860s, brothers John and Horace Dodge were born and raised in the modest town of Niles, tucked into the far southwestern edge of Michigan. Their father ran a machine workshop with his brothers, primarily fixing and assembling boat engines. In Niles, the Dodge boys grew up learning to work hard and not to complain about their financial struggles. By their own accounts, their upbringing wasn't easy. We were the poorest kids in town. When winter came, Horace and I had to go barefoot and wear tattered clothes. We didn't complain, just tried to make Mom feel it was okay, John once said. This challenging start didn't drive the two apart. Instead, it seemed to cement their bond as teammates. Despite being 4 years apart in age, both were highly driven from an early age and did whatever jobs they could to help out at home. After a business collapse in 1882, the family relocated, first to Battle Creek and later to Port Huron. There, John and Horace began working with their dad at Upton Manufacturing, a company focused on steam engines and threshers. It was at Upton that the boys sharpened their machinist skills and fell in love with mechanical work, an early passion that would soon define their future. In 1886, John Dodge made his way to Detroit and landed a job at Murphy Iron Works, a company that built steam boilers for engines on land and sea. He earned $16.50 per week. The following year, Horace joined him in Detroit, and John quickly helped his younger brother secure a job at the same company, where Horace earned $13.50 a week. While both brothers liked the job, the tough conditions in the smoke-filled factory may have played a role in John developing tuberculosis, then one of the deadliest diseases. His illness shook the family and left him out of work for some time. To recover, he reportedly consumed large doses of a medicine called Elixir 130, which was 42% alcohol. This may have triggered a lifelong drinking habit, something both brothers would become known for. With John sick, Horace took on another job to support them both. That role introduced him to Henry Leland, a man who would later create Cadillac and Lincoln. Leland was famous for his commitment to precision, and Horace likely picked up valuable knowledge working under him. After John got better, the brothers sought a cleaner and safer job. In 1892, they began working at Dominion Typograph Company in Windsor, Canada, just across the river. There, they built typesetting machines and used specialized tools for precise metalwork. While in Canada, Horace invented a 4-point, dust-sealed, adjustable ball bearing for bicycles. The design gave riders a smoother, cleaner ride. Teaming up with Fred Evans, their manager, they started Evans and Dodge Bicycle Company in 1897. Thanks to Evans' great sales skills, their bikes took off. By January 1898, they were planning new branches in London and Montreal. But with competition growing, the brothers sold their stake in the company and returned to Detroit with $7,500, ready to start something new. At the time they opened their own workshop, John was nearly 36 years old, and Horace was 32. They equipped the place with the latest tools available, hired a dozen skilled workers, and took on any job brought through their doors, ranging from farm tools and stoves to typesetters and engines. Within just a few months, their shop gained a reputation as the top location for precise mechanical work, drawing in customers from all over Michigan. One Detroit newspaper praised their facility as the most advanced and well-equipped in the city. Still, early on, they weren't without problems. Most of their clients were small businesses that often struggled to pay their bills. But soon, a major opportunity came knocking. A man named Ransom Eli Olds reached out. He needed reliable parts for his company, Olds Motor Works, which aimed to bring cars to a wider public. In 1901, Olds created and patented an assembly line system that let him build vehicles faster and more efficiently. Impressed by the Dodge brothers' capabilities, Olds hired them to supply engines and transmissions for his Model R curved dash, a lightweight and dependable car for its time. The brothers delivered excellent parts, and the car became a huge hit in its first year, with hundreds of units sold, marking it as the first gasoline-powered American car to reach wide sales. By 1902, production ramped up to 2,500 vehicles. This success allowed the Dodge brothers to expand to a larger facility in Detroit. Their work with Olds quickly made them wealthy and solidified their standing as top-tier manufacturers. But their achievements weren't just due to technical skill. They combined it with strong business instincts. The know-how they gained from earlier factory jobs and their bicycle venture gave them a deep understanding of production and management. Soon, the name Dodge became linked with high standards and reliability, qualities that caught the attention of another key figure who would completely reshape their destiny, Henry Ford. In 1902, Henry Ford, then 39 years old, was making his third attempt to get an auto company off the ground after 2 failed tries. He needed skilled help to manufacture parts, which led him to the Dodge brothers' shop. After meeting them in person and inspecting their operations, Ford was so impressed that he quickly offered a deal. He promised the brothers that together they could build more vehicles than Oldsmobile ever could. But this was before Ford became an industry titan. At that point, he had a reputation for poor financial management, something the Dodge brothers were well aware of. Even so, they declined a safer deal with Oldsmobile in 1903, taking a gamble on Ford instead. They agreed to deliver 650 sets of chassis components, everything but the wheels, tires, and body, for $250 each. However, Ford didn't have much cash. Though the brothers fulfilled their end, he often delayed payments, which understandably frustrated them. At one point, they considered selling the equipment elsewhere, as allowed in their agreement. Instead, they chose a smarter route. John and Horace proposed forgiving the $7,000 Ford owed them, and even offered an extra $3,000 in exchange for a 10% ownership stake in Ford Motor Company and full rights to Ford's assets if the company failed. Ford didn't like the terms and tried to bargain, but with few options, he agreed. The brothers resumed work. Although their start with Ford was rocky, the arrangement eventually paid off. That 10% share turned out to be an extremely wise move. Their stock dividends soared almost immediately, and their manufacturing deal also paid handsomely. They produced the key components for every Ford car from 1903 to 1914, including the game-changing Model T. Though the assembly line concept belonged to Ransom Olds, Ford refined it by adding conveyor belts to move vehicles through production. With this method, a new car rolled off the line every 90 minutes. The Model T sold in the millions, and by 1914, 9 out of 10 cars on the road were Fords. The Dodge workforce grew from 120 to more than 5,000, making them the world's largest parts supplier. The brothers became extremely wealthy, buying property, yachts, and lavish homes. But Detroit's high society didn't welcome them. They partied with their workers, drank heavily, and were shunned by elite clubs and institutions. Not ones to back down, they responded with bold moves. When denied access to the Detroit Symphony, they financed it and joined anyway. When a country club refused Horace membership, he built a grand mansion next door with a noisy garage just to annoy its members. It looked like the once impoverished kids from Niles had it all, but their greatest achievement still lay ahead. They were about to launch one of the most prominent auto companies on earth. While the collaboration between Henry Ford and the Dodge brothers had brought them immense success, it was always clear their paths would eventually diverge. Ford wanted independence from the brothers, and John and Horace were growing increasingly frustrated with his controlling nature and unwillingness to consider their input. They had often suggested changes to improve Ford's designs, particularly the Model T, but Ford ignored them, insisting they stick to making parts and leave the rest to him. Although they were raking in millions with relatively low risk, John and Horace understood that their reliance on Ford posed long-term dangers. So in 1913, John officially stepped down as vice president of Ford Motor Company, stating, "I'm tired of being carried around in Henry Ford's vest pocket." They initiated an ambitious restructuring plan that would span 18 months. Then, on July 1st, 1914, the Dodge brothers introduced their own car manufacturing venture, the Dodge Brothers Motor Company. The public already knew John and Horace as top-tier engineers, so it wasn't shocking when their brand new car, the Dodge Model 30, made a huge splash. Over 6,000 people turned up to witness its unveiling. The vehicle had a 4-cylinder engine producing 35 horsepower, 15 more than the Model T, but its power wasn't the only standout feature. The Dodge 30 was the first production car to feature an all-steel body. Unlike the Model T, it came equipped with electric lights, a starter motor, a 12-volt battery, and even a speedometer. It was packed with advancements. By 1915, the brothers had built and sold over 45,000 vehicles, making them the third highest-selling automaker in America within their first full year. Unlike Ford, they didn't introduce new models each year. Instead, they improved existing designs and gradually added more options, such as sedans, roadsters, touring cars, taxis, and trucks. When someone questioned why their cars cost more than a Model T, Horace famously replied, "Just think of all those Ford owners who will someday want an automobile." Clearly, a fierce rivalry had begun, and by 1916, the Dodge brothers had sold 72,000 cars. A year later, they exceeded 100,000. Meanwhile, Ford was anything but pleased. Though the brothers had left his company, they still held a 10% stake and used those dividends to fund their own brand. In a twist of irony, Ford's own profits were helping bankroll his new competition, and he absolutely hated it. To regain control, Ford stopped issuing dividends. He poured the savings into constructing the massive River Rouge factory, raised employee wages to $5 per day, and slashed the price of the Model T. These moves helped his company grow, while financially straining shareholders, especially the Dodge brothers. In retaliation, the brothers sued Ford. After 3 years of courtroom battles, they emerged victorious. The court ordered Ford to pay more than $2 million in unpaid dividends and resume the regular payments. Fed up, Ford made a bold move in 1919. He bought back the Dodge brothers' shares for a whopping $25 million. Between this sale and the dividends they'd received over the years, the brothers turned their initial $10,000 investment into a staggering $32 million windfall. At the same time, Dodge Brothers Motor Company continued thriving. Their car's quality was so widely recognized that they barely needed advertising. Simple slogans like "it speaks for itself" and "dependability," a term they actually coined, were enough. Their brand gained even more credibility in 1916 when a U.S. Army officer used 3 Dodge vehicles during a pursuit of outlaws in Mexico. These were the first military vehicles ever used by American forces. This event paved the way for contracts with the U.S. Army during World War I. The brothers provided not only vehicles, but also truck frames and ambulance chassis. They even received an international request from France, which needed help building recoil systems for its 155mm artillery. These military sales helped make up for lost export markets during the war and cemented Dodge's reputation for building rugged, reliable machines, a brand image still used today. By 1920, the Dodge brothers had climbed to become America's second-largest automaker, delivering more than 145,000 cars that year. It seemed like their legacy was destined for even greater heights. But fate had other plans. Just when everything seemed to be aligning for even greater achievements, tragedy struck. On January 2nd, 1920, John and Horace Dodge traveled to New York City to attend the National Automobile Show. But during the trip, both men contracted influenza. By the time they returned to Detroit a week later, the illness had already progressed into pneumonia. Horace became ill first, and John remained constantly by his side, looking after his younger brother through the worst of it. But soon, John began showing symptoms as well, and was confined to bed shortly afterward. While Horace gradually began recovering, John's health took a drastic turn for the worse. His condition deteriorated rapidly, and just 10 days later, he passed away. His death left everyone around him devastated. Horace eventually regained his strength, but the loss of his older brother deeply shook him. At one point, he said, "The passing of my dear brother is to me a loss so great that I hesitate to look forward to the years ahead without his companionship." Despite his grief, Horace attempted to carry on with the company's operations, but not long after, his own health began to fail again. Over the following months, his condition worsened significantly. By August of that same year, Horace had stepped away from daily leadership and moved to his beachfront estate in Palm Beach, hoping that rest would restore his health. Sadly, recovery never came. On December 10th, 1920, just 11 months after John, Horace died due to cirrhosis of the liver. With both brothers gone in such a short time, the company found itself at a crossroads. Their widows inherited the business and appointed Frederick J. Haynes to lead the company. Haynes had been with the Dodge brothers since the early days and understood their goals and values well. Under his direction, the company introduced several new models and worked with the Graham brothers to begin manufacturing heavy-duty trucks. These new offerings helped boost sales, but Haynes's time at the helm wouldn't last long. In 1925, the Dodge widows decided to sell the entire company to a group of investors for $146 million in cash, a record-breaking deal at the time. Immediately after the acquisition, Haynes was replaced. Unfortunately, the new owners lacked experience in the automotive world. They approached Dodge purely as a financial asset, not as a brand with deep industry roots. That miscalculation quickly took a toll. Sales began to plummet. By 1927, Dodge's sales had dropped nearly 40% compared to the previous year. Their ranking fell from one of the top auto manufacturers to 13th place in the American market. Faced with this steep decline, the company was again put up for sale. This time, it caught the attention of Walter P. Chrysler. In 1928, Chrysler purchased the Dodge Company for $170 million. After the deal, the brand's name was officially shortened from Dodge Brothers Company to simply Dodge. Chrysler shifted the focus toward lower-priced vehicles, aiming to directly compete with Ford and Chevrolet. The move paid off. Over the next several decades, Dodge earned a reputation for power and flair, cementing itself as Chrysler's strongest performing division. Performance models like the Dodge Challenger and Charger became household names and fan favorites. In addition to their success in cars, Dodge also became a major player in the truck market. Their Ram line evolved into a full range of pickups and commercial trucks, offering many engine options and configurations that met the needs of consumers across industries. And so concludes the story of John and Horace Dodge, two self-made men from Niles, Michigan, who helped build the backbone of the American automotive landscape. They reached remarkable heights, but died far too soon. Their story largely overshadowed by bigger personalities like Henry Ford. Though their faces are mostly forgotten today, their name still rolls across roads all over the world. Their legacy, like that of Louis Chevrolet, is etched into steel, chrome, and the enduring spirit of American innovation. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more inspiring stories of success.